On behalf of Marcus Evans, I'd like to welcome you all to the Private Wealth Management Summit. My name is Jason Davis. I'm the Chief Client Development Officer for Marcus Evans. I'd also like to extend a special welcome to some of our open contract clients, Quorum Capital Management, CWS Capital, Five States Energy, Foremost Communities, Harborside Funding, Stuart Hay from SL Capital Partners, welcome Stuart, Whetstone Capital Advisors, White Oak Partners, and also a special welcome to our VIP client, Blue Bay Asset Management, who are our multi-channel partner. Welcome, Matthias, and your team. The purpose of this session that we're doing now, historically, for those that you have worked with us before, you've probably seen us do what we call sponsor briefings. We find that perhaps what we're going to do over the next half an hour is going to be extremely beneficial for you. We have two investors on the panel. Brad Rotter from Rotter Family Trust, welcome Brad. Joseph Mayer from Snatim Holdings, welcome Joseph. And we have also Stuart Hay, who's worked with me for 12 years at our events. And the idea of this session is to give you an insight from an investor's perspective of what they look for in a one-to-one meeting, and also from Stuart's perspective, how to capitalize on the opportunities that you'll be presented with over the course of the next 3 days. Todd Benjamin, who I've worked with, we've done this format all over the world, Todd and I. Todd is the former financial editor for CNN. I'd like to hand over to Todd, and I'll wrap up at the end. And over to you, Todd.
Thank you so much, Jason. We really want to maximize the time you have here, because it's been my experience, someone can be a very effective fund manager, but that doesn't necessarily mean once they make that transition, they're effective at selling their product. And so we want to take the next 20 minutes to give you an opportunity to hear from Stuart, who actually is selling investments, and to two other people who come here to listen to your pitches and have bought here in terms of what does or does not work. All of you have attended Marcus Evans summits in the past. I would just want to ask you why you keep coming back, and what do you find most valuable? Stuart, yeah.
I think for us, everybody knows where the elephants are, but it's a good opportunity to diversify our client base in a very convenient location. Everybody's together, everybody's got an interest, so it's really lack of travel to see any number of people. It saves us a lot of time.
I think the structure of this particular conference is quite a good one. The one-on-ones where you can plan in advance who you want to see, and I think it's very time efficient, at least from my perspective as an investor.
We come here for two reasons. One, to find managers for allocations, and secondly, to steal good investment ideas.
That's honest. And of course, those one-on-one meetings are key features of these summits. How should a sponsor prepare for those meetings? How should they tailor their approach in the meetings to win your business? Joe.
All I can say is what's had the biggest impact with us, and it's when we sign up to attend a conference, whether it's a Marcus Evans event or another sponsor. When we're contacted within a couple of weeks of signing up for attendance, that we're going to respond, and that starts a dialogue right then. So now we're going into the conference with an idea of who we're going to talk to and what we're going to speak to them about.
So begin the process long before they even get here. Yep, Brad.
Yes, I think once the process begins, the one suggestion I would have is to keep it simple. I saw a deck this week that was 52 pages, and every slide was filled with numbers and correlations. And at the end of the slide deck, I couldn't figure out what that company did. So it's very important to, in the first few minutes, try to articulate what that competitive advantage is, what that inefficiency is that your strategy is trying to collect and capture.
Stuart, you have converted 9 contracts in the last 2 to 3 months. I mean, that is phenomenal when you think about that, the amounts of money involved. How do you prepare for these events, and do you endorse wholeheartedly what Brad is saying about keeping it simple.
Yeah, I certainly endorse that. What we have is one slide. I mean, our business is incredibly simple, and in 20 minutes, I think you have to think, what are people going to take away from that 20 minutes, bearing in mind they're going to do 4 meetings in a row. So they're only going to remember one thing, or 2 things that you say to them. Now, most people would remember about me that I speak funny in it, but what we try to do is get the message in one slide, this is what we're talking about, and that will be the image that they take away.
But if you were doing a primer for all these people, because you have been hugely successful, as I just said, how do you actually prepare for these events? What do you make sure you do in the one-on-ones besides just making sure it's kept very simple? And most importantly, what about the follow-up?
Well, the things that we do, probably listen as much as you talk. I don't think I've got to get straight into it because I've only got 20 minutes. I think it's quite interesting to find out what brings them to the event, what their particular interest might be. If there's any social side you get into, I think that sort of helps establish a relationship. Be clear at the end of the meeting what's required and when it's expected by, and make sure you comply with that. I think the meeting doesn't need to last the allotted time. You know, we've done these 20, 25-minute meetings in the event, they finished up in 10 minutes, and that's been more than enough either for a yes or a no to send us more stuff. And then in the follow-up, try to make it personal, so we always call rather than email.
Listen more than you speak. Brad?
I think it's important to keep in mind the objective of that 30-minute meeting with the potential investor. The objective is to get another meeting, and that's where follow-up becomes very crucial. I found a web service this week that I've been using now for 7 days. It's called appear.in. What's that? It's a newfangled WebEx Google Hangout where you can just simply send somebody a URL of a room that you're waiting in, and they don't have to download any software. They don't have to put in the code and the passcode while they're driving. I remind people texting while driving is dangerous, but I think email's fine. But if you could right away in the next week send out that link and invite them to a video call, they will then equate your face with that meeting that they had a week ago, and that connection is very, very important because they're going to be seeing lots of people this week.
Stuart, I know one of the things that you are absolutely diligent about. As soon as that meeting is over, you have been taking a lot of notes during the entire time, and you make sure that you give the potential investor not what you think they want, but exactly what they ask for, correct?
Correct. And no more, just no more, no less. I think at the end of the meeting we get very clear, do you just want a research report, do you want a product summary, would you actually like an electronic copy of the pitch book, and then tailor it to exactly what they're looking for, and then when they get the follow-up email or the follow-up call, it is exactly what they've wanted.
What do you think the biggest mistake is that's made in a 30-minute pitch? Joe, Brad, I'd like to get your perspectives on this. Yeah.
I'll say the biggest turnoff is I've had a one-on-one conversation either in this, speed dating or informally, and what I get is being put on a distribution list for a cookie cutter email. That's the biggest turnoff. I don't mind getting that email if I had no contact with you, but don't send me that email if we've already had a one-on-one conversation.
You know, if the objective of the meeting is to keep it simple, you're not going to shower the potential investor with a bunch of charts and graphs and research reports and so forth. But you could help the investor organize those follow-ups by sending them a Dropbox link that has your pitch deck, that has your correlations and so forth, and then it makes it very easy for the investor to organize your stuff rather than sending 5 or 6 emails over the course of the next few weeks. Send them a Dropbox link, and then that will live on their computer, and as your numbers change or as another press release comes out on your fabulous strategy, it'll be right there in front of them, and they don't have to manage all the attachments.
But you mentioned, send your slide box or whatever. Stuart has one slide. You don't want to be bombarded by slides. You only want to get what you need. Do you find that most of these service providers do good follow-up, or what's been your experience?
I attend a conference. I'll probably speak to, I don't know what your numbers are, 23, 25, either formally or informally. I'll have follow-up, appropriate follow-up from 3.
3, even though you may have asked a lot more people for follow-up.
Yes.
Right. Think about that. You know, you're paying all this money to be here, and it seems like a no-brainer to do the follow-up, and you may think, I am doing the follow-up, but you aren't doing proper follow-up. Has that also been your experience at times, Brad?
Yeah, and that's probably a good number, and it's such an easy thing to do to follow up now with all the mechanized tools that are available. But again, it's important to associate that follow-up with your meeting, and that's why a follow-up video is really a good idea. It makes that connection.
Jason, I mean, you know, you deal with the investors, the service providers all the time. What has been your observation on the follow-up?
Well, I mean, it's exactly the same as what Brad and Joe have said. I mean, the follow-up is sadly lacking in many, many cases. People providing information which is irrelevant and not bothering to actually pick up the telephone. It's all about getting people to like you and trust you. And if you've got to get that chemistry going with the people, it's not just about sending emails. So, you know, the best form of communication is the telephone still, to this day.
This was shocking both to Jason and me. We were in Kuala Lumpur recently.
Yeah, we were in KL together, and Todd actually asked one of the investors, had they invested with somebody? And he said, I was about to, but he disappeared off the face of the earth. The unfortunate thing about it was he mentioned the sponsor's name, and the person was sitting at the back of the room. Now, a couple of days before, I was having a prep call with him, and he said that he wasn't getting any traction out of our events. They were a waste of money, and he wasn't going to be coming back. Well, it was kind of an embarrassing conversation we had following that session, wasn't it? I introduced him to the investor. He actually will do business with that person, and he is coming back to our events now. So it was kind of a very interesting situation, wasn't it, Todd?
It was a very situation and a shocking one. And also when you hear people like Joe and Brad say, maybe out of 20 meetings I have, I only get proper follow-up on 3, that certainly doesn't help your success ratio. Stuart, you, as I said twice now, you have been hugely successful, and you are very consistent about the type of follow-up you do.
Yeah, and I think Jason's point's right. I think emails are very easy to ignore. Phone calls are relatively hard to ignore when the phone's ringing on your desk, and I think it is a far more effective method of follow-up. Sometimes you have to lapse to email if you're not getting phone calls back and things like that, but generally we find phone meetings, finding out where the kids go to school, hunting them down, finding out where they're going on holiday, surprising them on the beach one day, you know, all those sorts of things.
So we've heard a lot of great things just in 15 minutes here. You know, first of all, Stuart always says, keep it simple. Yeah. Listen more than you speak. Try and make a connection. Find out what they're really interested in. I was speaking with Brad before, and he said one of the most frustrating things is they just start going into their pitch deck, and it may not even be an investment I'm interested in, and so they don't really find out what I'm interested in. So that's another very important thing. And the other thing, follow-up is key. Follow-up is key. And you may think, well, I am doing this follow-up, but no, you're not. So make sure that every potential person that you speak with, that you follow up properly, give them the information that they ask for and need versus what you think they need, and don't give them too much, just what they need. And when you do follow up, don't be afraid to make a phone call as opposed to an email. Brad, I think you wanted to add something here?
Here's a tip for people that I often give to advisors when I end up on a email list to see the monthly results. It typically is in a PDF or a document. Those of us in cybersecurity don't open those because they're fraught with danger. That's one of the benefits of using Dropbox to transfer information, because that person is opening it up on the Dropbox browser rather than on your computer. So when you're sending out the monthly flash results, put the results in in the email body or in the subject, so that the people that are time constrained can see how you did for the month, but don't have to spend time opening up a PDF document to see what you did that month. That one simple thing would be advantageous to all.
Great advice. What I want to do right now, before I throw it back to Jason, is are there any questions? Anyone have a question in what you've heard? Yes, we have a question right here. Let me just borrow your mic real quickly. Dave.
Yes, Dave DeWitt. My question is, it's going to be December, we're heading into the holiday seasons. How do you want to be followed up with, considering the time of year that we are in?
That's an excellent question. Joe, Brad?
Steaks, a case of wine, something like that.
There you go, steaks, case of wine always works. Yeah, no Dropbox on that stuff, I can tell you. Yeah.
I'll just say we're agnostic. Call us, email us, but it needs to be specific. So if we've met, we want you to reference that we've met and why you're calling us, either via email or phone call. If it's a boilerplate email that comes to us, I guarantee you I won't see it.
And Stuart, I think you'd probably say there are no sensitivities in terms of timing. The only misstep you can make is not doing the email or phone call, correct?
I think not doing the email, but I think that's a fair point. I think you wouldn't want to be sending something over the holiday period. I think that would make sense. And just the last point I would make is never assume you're going to get the leads from the one-on-one meetings. The leads that we've had and converted leads have been from drink sessions and meeting people on beaches and talking to people in the gym and things like that. So use all sources.
Great point. Yeah, we got a question right back here. Michael.
Yes, thank you. I just had a couple more questions on the follow-up. Stuart, can you give us kind of examples on how many times you call people and, you know, the balance between being persistent and being a pest? And then the other question, you talk about the kind of the personal touch with the follow-up email. Can you give us a couple examples of what has worked through? Because you know, obviously if we meet with you guys for 20 to 25 minutes and we have a productive meeting and then we give you a call in 2 weeks, you know, we don't want to regurgitate exactly what we just talked about in the last meeting, but at the same time, you know, there might not be a drastic amount of change since that time. So if you can give us an example of kind of what's worked, that'd be great.
I think it varies by client. For me, it's about 3 attempts to reach them by phone before I would send a follow-up email, and then I think when it's on the call, it's more just a sort of 2-minute summary of what you discussed, where you are with your fundraising, what happens next, and what might be the next part of their process, and what they might need from you. And very often it will be them saying, well, we don't need anything for now, but can you follow up again in 3 months? And then it just gets slotted into the diary for a 3-month follow-up. So some of it's quite a slow burn. But, you know, as Todd says, we've just had quite a lot that actually people come to this wanting to invest in things, and we've seen quite quick conversions really across the world, so out of Asia, Europe, the UK, and US and Canada.